Hello, everybody. It's Alex and Henrik once again from the Remote Work Live podcast. Thank you for joining us. And today, I just want to start with a statistic before we talk about ourselves first. So, an MIT study with 453 professionals doing realistic workplace writing tasks, so emails, posts, memos, analysis, found that access to AI reduced time to complete tasks by about 40% on average, while quality scores rose by 18%. So I thought that was a pretty sort of stark sort of figure, a stark sort of analysis of how writing with AI can really help. And I really wanted to have Henrik today, Henrik Gyor of My AI Fluency, to be with me on the podcast because Henrik and I, as much as we're friends, we also podcasters as well. We've met each other in the podcasting world, but we're desk workers. We're sitting down a lot, doing a lot of work, but we're always trying to find ways of improving those efficiencies as far as we can. And Henrik of, as I said, My AI Fluency, I thought would be really, really good to hear your take as well, Henrik, on how writing and how AI is affecting your productivity with writing. So, as I said, the problem I've highlighted already is well, it's not just the writing itself. I'm not somebody who enjoys writing really that much. I'm not too bad at writing. I'm pretty good. It feels slow sometimes to me. There's seems like there's no structure. Sometimes, again, when you're working, especially remotely, you're thinking about 10 different things at once. So the ideas sometimes are a bit constrained. So the aim of this episode is to show how we use AI to turn conversations into scripts, posts, emails and other content, and how you can actually hopefully use some of the things that we use and sort of apply it to how you work. And as I said, we're not focusing on the tools. We're not preaching to you. We're not experts in terms of certain AI tools, as it were. Although Henrik has expertise in the arena of AI, we're not coming up from the standpoint of being a guru in a certain tool or a certain thing, as you probably see quite a lot on YouTube. We want to share our workflows with you to kind of show you how you can then apply AI. And it doesn't really matter which tool you apply, but as long as it does the job, apply AI to improve your workflows. So, yep. So I myself, as I said, I do a lot of writing, Henrik. I write LinkedIn posts, I write emails, I write blogs, scripts as well. I found myself actually, especially with the podcasting, because you and I are both podcasters. So I found myself in a way burning out when I was doing manual script writing, or I was trying to come up with ideas from the top of my head or even on the internet. And, when I was doing LinkedIn posts, same thing. It's just the ideation, the process of writing, all these things, Henrik, that really sort of stopped me in my tracks, I think, eventually. And I wanted to find another solution. And a lot of the solutions that I use now, you've referred to me. So even things like Otter, ChatGPT, some of the certain things that you use that I now apply in my work. So, Henry, I thought we could share a couple of our workflows. I'll start with one of mine, or unless there's, how are you using it? What sort of things are you writing? And I suppose you can talk about your workflows as we go through.
Sure. Yeah. So I've written 9 books, and AI is not writing books yet, realistically speaking, and not quality ones at least. But they are definitely helping in ideation and in cleanup. Whether I'm writing a book, an email, a LinkedIn post, a script, it's definitely helping for ideation, meaning the creation of the ideas. Instead of racking your brain about stuff, you can just plug in a few ideas into AI, and it'll give you thousands of ideas, and then you can throw away 999 of them, and then that one kernel that it gives you, you can continue on that. So it doesn't replace you, it augments you, and it augments our work, which is super helpful. So it accelerates it instead of like pondering way too long on things and drafting and redrafting and cleaning up. And eventually, as writers, if you write enough, you're blind to your own edits. right? So Word or whatever tool you're happening to use, it is helpful to a degree for spelling and grammar, all the fun things, but not in the sense of telling a story or anything like that. If you're down a rabbit hole and you don't realize it, there's very little you can do about it aside from take time away from it or have editors. And one of the editors can be AI, right? To do that. So I have them looking at everything I write on a regular basis. And I use one tool called Grammarly, and it's correct. It gives me stats every week of how I did. Is so far in the past 10 years, it evaluated 12 million words. Yeah, 12 million words.
Incredible.
And it also tells me like the confidence rating, the mood, the all the different attributes about the writing that I've been doing that week, of whether it's increasing, decreasing by X%. Interestingly enough, what the common errors that I'm seeing, or what the AI is seeing. And so if I had to focus on punctuation or whatever, or whatever the issue is, it'll say, oh, you've had a lot of errors around this. This is something I need to focus on. Now I'm more conscious about it, and I can focus on bettering that if necessary. Super helpful in ideation, in correction, in redrafting or drafting the first draft, not necessarily the final draft, because there's a variety of things that you want to correct in AI and check, right? So it's still hallucinating on occasion for a variety of different reasons, where you don't take something straight out of AI and plug it in. That's the lazy way to do it, and it's really helpful when you use it right.
On your point about Grammarly, and I think there's a certain group of people whose perception of AI is that it makes you lazy, or makes you kind of rely upon it heavily to the point that you almost become numb to. But that point about Grammarly that you just made, I think Grammarly has actually helped me to improve my punctuation. It's helped me to improve, how I construct sentences, because it gives you those pointers that you mentioned, and it gives you the sort of steer that I guess if you had an English teacher next to you would do, sort of thing. Yeah, I like that example. I use Grammarly actually quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And the first actual workflow I want to share with you is related to writing podcast episodes. So from transcripts, and you and I, Henrik, we transcribe quite a few of our conversations. We start off with I'll just talk you through the steps, the workflow that I use in order to produce even something like this episode, for example. So we've started this with a conversation. So we planned it. We record, calls. We have discussions ahead of time about what the episode will be about. We do our research in the background as well. We always make sure there is a transcript. We always make sure. I think one of the things that we do, because obviously we are consenting to having this, the ideation, or at least the capture of the information, we're consenting to that. So if you are doing it yourself, you make sure you get the consent, obviously the consent of the people who are part of the process. And we aim to stop relying on memory and just scattered notes, because again, when you're capturing a real conversation with something like Otter, for example, I've noticed the quality of Otter has improved in terms of how it recognizes words. And the more and more you use it, I think it actually begins to understand even the dialects and the different accents, and it makes it a lot clearer what it is, what's been spoken about. So you and I, Henrik, we've aimed to stop relying on memory and notes here and there. I spoke to you about I was looking in my cupboard just the other day, and I had like reams and reams of paper that I'd used to take notes previously on some of the meetings that you and I had. So Otter was a sort of real game changer for me. So that's step one for me. Step two is really dropping the transcript. You normally, after we finish a meeting, you'd send me that transcript. We'd share the transcript, that we'd collaborate on that transcript, paste that transcript into ChatGPT. And what I'm tending to do now is I'm gathering all of the transcripts into one document, as opposed to having different documents. Or some people could even put the transcript into the instructions
Mhm.
There's an instructions area of ChatGPT, because that then becomes like a knowledge bank of all the conversations that you've had that
Mhm.
relate, for example, to you and I doing the podcasting. So in this instance, I asked Chat. We had a fairly structured conversation on the themes that we wanted to talk about with these particular episodes, and that meant I was able to ask AI to pull out the main themes and the main topics and categorize each topic. And the aim is to see the shape of the episode without really reading everything. And then step three for me was asking for a simple episode outline. So for this one on writing and previous ones that we've had about meetings, for example, the I prompted the AI to put together a 15 to 20 minute episode outline based on the transcript. And you can tweak that. It can be an hour if you want, it can be a 20-minute episode. So you can use the AI to prompt in that way and ask it to make clear sections of the conversation. So an introduction, the pain points, stories behind it, your story, Henrik, my story, the workflows, the takeaways, and the structures as well. And step four for me was turn the outline into bulleted points. So again, the introduction, all these different sections of the podcast, with the aim of having something to talk about, which gave us a bit of structure for this conversation and other conversations. And then step five, edit it, because as you were saying, Henrik, AI is by no means perfect. It can hallucinate, it can make mistakes, it needs training. It's not just you can just shove the transcript into AI and just say, go off and write a transcript, go off and write a sort of a script outline. You have to train it as you're going along. So yeah, editing is important, asking it to simplify the language in a way that's in line with how we talk, Henrik, and all that sort of thing. And the aim is to make it do all the heavy lifting, really. And that's really my process, the 5 step process that I go through when it comes to just writing a script as we
That's
are
great.
today. And yeah,
Mhm. Mhm. That's awesome. Yeah.
yeah. And, it's something that we're still refining it, aren't we, Henry? We're still
Mhm.
refining this.
Yeah.
Well, I am anyway, in terms of refining the process of writing even this podcasting script, because I myself, I'm used to solo podcasting. So podcasting with somebody else is something quite new. So even when you were when I was asking the AI, I was saying, pull out pieces of the conversation that relate to, for example, writing that I spoke about, or pull out elements of the conversation that on writing that Henrik spoke about. So yeah, Henrik, it was all about me trying to get a balance. I think we're getting there, aren't we? I think.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. And I would only add to the training, when you're training an AI around what you're wanting to output on a consistent basis, like from transcripts of discussions, to your point, all the way to talking points for a conversation like this, for podcast notes, for example, of what we're going to talk about. Make sure you add the specificity, right, of what you're looking for, and the context, right? Because unless you create a project or you create a GPT in ChatGPT, or pick your favorite tool in question, it needs the context repeatedly, especially if you change agents from one tool to another, because you can use, there's thousands of AI tools, right?
Mhm.
Whether it's for writing or ideation or image creation or video creation or audio editing, video editing, you name it, whatever you want it to do. Each one needs context to one degree or another, and slightly varying context of what's applicable to what you're trying to output. Right. So it's not creating it in a vacuum, because it'll create you something in a vacuum and it won't be what you want.
Mhm.
So if you give the specificity, if you give the specifics of what you're asking for, and you give it the context, and then you explain what you want in that content, then it helps you a lot. I've noticed that ChatGPT has strengths and weaknesses, to your point. And then there's a number of other tools. There's Perplexity, there's Claude, there's Gemini, there's Copilot, of course. It's really pick the tool that's you're comfortable with, but make sure you add that specificity in the context for that content that you're desiring. And the more specific you are, and sometimes it will vary based on the output that you want. It'll help, particularly for writing, since that's what we're covering today. For writing, because it has all the rules of pick your language, English, right? In this case, instead of referencing a dictionary or a thesaurus, which, the English majors of the world, they do that. And they're like religious, like, oh, I have my, fill in the blank branded dictionary and thesaurus right here. And I reference it all the time. It's like, that's great. And we know how slow that is.
Yep, of
To your
course.
point. So back to the MIT study is like, if you want to be more efficient and faster in what you're doing, it's is it going to give you more options? Yeah. Can you filter through those options faster? So it's a choice to use AI, and it's a choice
It,
to use it efficiently.
and it's, I mean, I was skeptical at the beginning, but I think, yeah, it's like you said, it's a choice, but I think it's something that it's becoming a prerequisite in many areas, I think.
Mhm.
And you really have to think about how you can take advantage of tools that are available to make you more efficient, make you stand out in some way. So it's becoming very quickly a prerequisite to use AI in some form or another. And I think the way you use AI, Henrik, really, I mean, writing a book for me is like an undertaking that I've always thought of. I've started to make notes. I've started to put outlines for books together, and this was pre AI, and I kind of just got so inundated and so consumed that I kind of the ideas ran out, and then it just didn't work for me. But you're using AI for writing books as well.
So my last few books, I did use the early versions of pre ChatGPT for ideation and for outlines only. They were not powerful enough to write chapters. Nowadays, if you want to create a sci-fi book, you could probably write it with ChatGPT. The one example that I heard recently was grandparents, instead of reading the same bedtime story for the billionth time to your, under 10-year-old, you pull out ChatGPT on your tablet, phone, whatever, and you have their imagination of that young boy or girl create the story, and then you have it typed out for them, or you speak to it, and then it'll generate that story for you, and then you monitor it as the adult, right, in the room, because it's still an AI, and you can filter it to whatever you desire, right, and of course you're writing for that said aged child, right, but then it there is no end to that story, right, so it's very imaginative, it's extremely creative. On some of the professional versions of the tools, you have a slider of how much you want it to hallucinate on purpose, right? So it's like, I think it was Amazon. There's a slider where you can go to like 0.01% hallucination or 100%.
Hmm.
So if you want full sci-fi, full bore, you can do that, and it'll go hog wild on you on
And
whatever you can imagine.
on that point of hallucinations, there may be some people out there who don't necessarily know what that is, hallucinations of AI. What is there an example of what to look out for in terms of, well, detecting that your AI is hallucinating?
Well, if you know something that's factual and then it start adding non-facts in there, like one example is I was looking up for various events. I was looking up locations with coffee shops, for example, like list coffee shops in my area, and it created a list of them, and I was like, the last few, they didn't exist. There were places that didn't exist. And I went to Google Maps and I checked it. It's like, no, these places don't exist. It's like, there's no address. It's the first clue. But it'll create things that don't exist. It'll create papers that don't exist. It'll create new
Mhm.
papers. So research papers and things like that. And granted, the reason why AI is increasing so fast is because there are so many research papers coming out. If you look at the exponential, it's like literally a curve that just skyrockets because there are so many research papers written about AI. It used to be like, dozens that, only PhDs and developers. We're neither of us are that. But anyways, and neither of us are writing papers about that. But but it's like thousands per month are being written. So that's why we're seeing an exponential growth in the past handful of years. Less than literally like it was 2023.
Okay.
That when it started exploding, and it exploded in popularity faster than any other social media tool or any other form of media ever,
Hmm.
in the number of people using it. So there's over 100 million people at last time I checked using it regularly.
And I guess going back to the hallucinations bit is quite useful if you're writing a fiction book, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
But for you, what is it, do you have like a set process when it comes to writing your books or whatever it is that you're writing using AI? Is there a, sort of like a process that you have in your mind?
Well, so not necessarily for books, because books I've parked most of the books temporarily. I've already written 9, so until something really sparks my interest and piques my curiosity, I'm going to park it for now. But as far as writing, to your point, and using AI, a lot of emails, a lot of drafts are started via ChatGPT or a variety of different tools. It depends on what I'm trying to write. Like sometimes it's a playbook, sometimes it's a slide deck. So if I'm trying to do a slide deck, I'll go to Manus, and Manus is pretty amazing. I can output it to anything I want. There's several other tools that will do that. Gamma will do that as well, and it really depends. So it'll generate me one that's branded if it needs to be branded for a client. It'll generate me one that's branded for me. It'll generate one that's not branded, just straight out of the box, as long
Mhm.
as you supply that branding, right? That starting point. And then it's also like, well, how many slides do you want, or what do you want in each slide? And then you can curtail the text first, the text content of each
Mhm.
slide 1 through fill in the blank, and then what graphics do you want in there? Do you want charts? Do you want imagery? Do you want iconography? Whatever that looks like.
Mhm.
So I've been doing a lot of that recently. And then there's also email drafts. Like, oh, I need to email draft something. Like, let me check it. Like here's the original email. I might even remove the person's name and email address, so I'm not sharing the PII. So
Mhm.
no personal identifiable information is being put into the AI. So there's no connection to that individual or that company. And I might be putting the first name in there, right? I'll put that in there if that matters, if that's part of the context, and have a draft a response that's positive about whatever response in that sense. And then based on that, I'll copy it and put it into an email and draft it, fix the few nuances there, unless it's terrible, and then I just have to add more context or more specificity into the AI, and then I just copy it and put it into the email or into a PowerPoint or whatever the output is, right? Whether it's writing an email, writing a message of some sort, writing a playbook, all the different things that you can write, right? Sometimes I'll write reports, and yes, the reports will be pumped into there, and they'll be checked regularly, because there's going to be X number of versions of that report, right? Until you finalize that report for a variety of reasons, and you can check it and make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. And it's obviously you have to check it, that that's you're still the human in the loop, and
Mhm.
you should be worried if there's no human in the loop. That's our purpose, is to be the human in the loop. You're the requester as the human in the loop, and you're the receiver of that output. And if you're not the human in the loop, checking to make sure A, it's still working, B, it's outputting what you're supposed to be doing, why are you there?
Yeah, and I think that's a key thing, isn't it, with the operators? There's this term going around, AI operator,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's that's how I'm trying to see myself now as somebody who is operating the AI for whatever end it may be, for a positive outcome for
Mm-hmm.
myself. Using it, I'm by no means am I using it perfectly, but I'm using it because I want to try to improve, to stay relevant,
Mm-hmm.
to stay up to date. And things are changing so quickly. It's not possible to completely be on the bleeding edge, is it?
No.
Because things are changing so rapidly. But at
Mm-hmm.
least, the very least, just trying to immerse myself in as much as possible without going down rabbit holes and without drowning is the key. Just a
Yes,
bit by bit each day, you know.
totally.
But for me, I think what I've decided is that as somebody who creates content quite a lot, I think there's something you said on the last show about capturing information. Capturing your IP, capturing the ideas of other people with their consent, always taking sort of electronic notes so that can be used and then sort of repurposed into other content. So repurposing, you can repurpose anything, can't you? You
Mhm.
can repurpose even images. You can, not that we're going to talk about that today, but repurposing transcripts is a big thing for me. Even conversations that I've had on the Remote Work Life podcast from years ago, transcribing them, because YouTube itself, if you upload to YouTube, it will transcribe. I mean, YouTube's not the best when it comes to transcriptions, but it makes it possible to transcribe conversations. It makes it possible to transcribe monologues, and you shouldn't waste that information because you can transform it into multiple pieces of content as I do. So I would choose, I've done about 250 podcasts. Henrik, you've probably done a lot more than that. That's like a mammoth amount of data,
Mhm. It is.
mammoth amount of information. It shouldn't be wasted in terms of turning that into something else. You could use the AI, ask the AI to pull out the main ideas, 2 or 3 clear ideas, let AI label the ideas in a simple, plain language. And then another step would be to draft specific content types. I've repurposed podcasts into LinkedIn posts, into articles or newsletter articles or blog posts, show notes, so many different things. But again, as you said, it's important to edit and make sure that it remains as factual as possible and relevant, as little hallucination as possible. So yeah, transcripts and repurposing is something that's been really, really, really big. And I think that's all I want to share today in terms of how we're using it to write.
Mhm.
But what I'd say is just, as Henrik and I have said it in a previous episode, is to capture your notes, even if you're setting yourself a session where you're just doing a brainstorm on a certain activity or a certain idea, whether you're trying to write a blog or a LinkedIn post or an email. You can capture some of your ideas about what you want in that email, in that blog post, by using something like Otter or the thousands of other sort of transcription softwares that are out there. So pick one of those recordings, get the transcript, and use AI to ask it for a simple outline of a LinkedIn post. Ask it to do that, but give it, as Henrik was saying, give it context, and then turn it into a LinkedIn post. If you're trying to do LinkedIn, and it can turn it into different versions. It can turn it into like a list style LinkedIn post or a contrarian take or an informational post. So there's so many different things that it can do. It can duplicate your thoughts. It can really help with content production at scale. So
Mhm.
that's what I suggest doing. But Henrik, I just really wanted to say thank you for joining me today for this
Yeah,
episode.
of course. Always be
Um,
capturing.
that's
AB,
the that's the
ABC.
that's the phrase.
Always
That's the
be capturing.
phrase. That's something I learned from you this year. So I'll be doing that as well. But I think we have been doing that, but it's a matter of just sort of going through with it and using everything at your disposal to create content from our perspective. Thanks again for everybody listening. That was another episode of the Remote Work Life podcast, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.